Hello one and all, welcome to Unboxing. I'm your host, Iva the Machine.
And I'm Iva Jankovic.
Today with our special guest, we're going to be unboxing the future of Berlin. The city has grown and changed a lot in the last years, leaving us with an open question. What future do we want to create for Berlin so it remains a livable and thriving city?
Our guest today is a startup community activist with a mandate to disrupt the culture, co-founder of Silicon Alley, Travis Todd.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for the applause. I'm very excited to be here.
Today we're in a very special place. We're in Fraunhofer Time Lab, and Travis can explain us a little bit what this space is.
Sure, yeah. So the Fraunhofer Heinrich Hertz Institute Time Lab is a 180-degree curved theater with full surround sound with very unique sound setup. And we use it here for a multitude of things, and we're going to see a quick demo of one of the more creative things we do here in terms of like immersive cinema. But it's also used in very scientific projects such as demoing concepts for noise reduction in trains. You can kind of simulate when you put up these barrier walls next to the train tracks what the noise reduction will be, and you can bring in people to see that, to feel and see that large simulation here in the time lab.
Okay, so we're gonna put our fancy glasses and we're gonna experience. Wait, Timo. Now, go for it.
I like
It's
the
nice.
Pink Floyd-y part of this, no?
Yeah.
It's nice how the sound comes from all the places.
Yeah.
no?
Yeah. It's fully circular sound.
Nice.
The backup singers over there.
Yeah. Travis, we always ask our guests to bring one object that represents them either personally or professionally. I'm curious to see which object did you bring?
Sure. Yeah. So this is something that I think represents me pretty personally, not very professionally. But this is a cookbook of Mexican cuisine, specifically from the region of Oaxaca. One of my brothers gave it to me for Christmas one year, and it's really sparked. I've always liked Mexican food. But it's really sparked a love for me in like cooking, and especially this style of food. And so I now cook at least once a month for my family, for my neighbors, Oaxacan dishes. And it's really ironic because I've actually never been to Mexico.
Oh, well, a reason to go.
But yes, that will be fixed in 2026.
Ah, nice. And I see that you have a lot of notes in there. What is that?
These are some of my favorite recipes in here. So or things I'm looking forward to cooking. So this is a tomatillo salsa that I make a lot. Let's see. Coloradito is a famous mole that they have in Oaxaca, and specifically in this restaurant. So yeah,
Amazing.
it's well loved.
Can you make a sound with it, Travis?
Make a sound with it.
Yeah.
You can do.
Amazing. Cool. We're gonna make music now.
Cool. Great.
With the cooking book.
Awesome.
There's some...
I'm used to play percussion, so.
Percussion.
There you go.
I would
think I'll come-
I would think that you play guitar. I saw a picture of you with the guitar.
I do
and-
play, yeah, I play a number of things, but in high school, I played percussion in the school orchestra.
Nice.
Yeah.
What kind of percussion? Because that's what I study also.
Well, everything in the percussion ensemble, everything from bells to xylophone to triangle to cymbals.
So classical percussion.
Yeah, that was in the high school orchestra, and then I played marching bass drum in the band, and then I played bass guitar in a couple of rock bands.
Ah,
so,
nice.
yeah.
Cool. Amazing. Yeah, so there's not much surprise for you about this.
Love making music.
Yeah, amazing. Well, there's something very specific that I love about making music is that demands us to be present in the moment, right? And I think nowadays this is almost like a skill, right? We have so much distraction, so much digital portals that can be open for us. So making music, it's always this moment of being present in the moment. And that's exactly what I want us to practice now.
Cool.
So I'm gonna build a beat using mostly the sounds of my body, voice, and a random object. And then we're gonna jam on top of it.
Nice.
Cool, so.
Guiro.
A guido, exactly.
Yeah.
But made out of a tube for electricity or something like this, or construction. So yeah, there we have it. Let's go. You can join me now. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Nice one.
Lovely warm up. Thank you, Diego.
Good stuff.
Oh, amazing. Well, that's another thing you get to do with your cookbook that you never imagined before, I
Yeah.
assume.
Yeah. I gotta get one of these.
For sure. It's a very fun thing to play. It's Push from Ableton.
Yeah.
It's
I
very
recognize
nice.
it. I never actually played with it before, but I remember when it came out.
And now the 3, it's a standalone, so you can not need a computer, no nothing, like no even
I think
battery.
I would lose it to my son pretty quickly, though.
Oh, that's a good thing to lose.
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Amazing. So, Travis, to start with, tell us more, like what brought you to Berlin? Where did you come? What was your previous destination? When did you come to Berlin? Tell us a bit about that.
So I came to Berlin in 2007. I was living in Florida, where I went to university and working in advertising. But I had done, throughout college and after college, I'd done a bunch of like backpacking in Europe and just absolutely fell in love with kind of the lifestyle and the work-life balance. And yeah, wanted to move to Berlin, or wanted to move to Europe for a little while. Was the idea, after college. And then I met, the short story is I met my wife, who's from Berlin, and she said, well, come to Berlin, try it out. And so I'll come for a couple months and try it out, and was starting my first startup at the time. So it was really serendipitous coincidence that I came to Berlin starting a startup like right when kind of that inflection point was happening in the tech industry here. So then it kind of sucked me in, like does a lot of people. And
Startup in love.
yeah. I think a lot. I mean, yeah, I think that's a pretty common story, honestly, in Berlin.
What did you study?
I studied graphic design So I did, yeah, I was a designer, but I'd also like started coding when I was 14, like first, 1994 when we got our first dial-up modem, and I'm sitting
From
there in the
textbooks or?
No, I was just kind of like hacking around online and using like user groups and early forums and stuff to learn HTML, and that was even before like CSS and JavaScript and stuff like that. Yeah.
There's two things that we ask each of our guests, especially as the whole topic of the series is, Under the Arms of Berlin. What is one thing you love and one thing you hate in Berlin?
I love that Berlin is diverse and international and has such like a mix of people, and that and for that reason I think it's really easy for people to kind of find their tribe and like get integrated into the city. If I can kind of add a part B, I also love that it's like that Berlin it's a big metropolitan city, but it feels really spread out. It is like the greenest capital city in Europe. It's not as dense as other capital cities, so you get kind of all the benefits of being in a big metropolitan area, but not like I think a lot of the stress that you would get, say, living in London or New York or Paris or something like that. One thing I hate is the bureaucracy is frustrating, obviously. So especially like trying to run a business, or everything seems like it takes 10 steps when it could take one, and trying to just kind of like live your life from that standpoint. That's probably number one concern. And then I could be really cliche and say like the weather and the winter and stuff, But,
there's something interesting here that we might be able to learn something about is what are the challenges you see as entrepreneur with the bureaucracy? So people that are coming and want to like start a business, they could be aware of it or even prepare for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just so many things that you're not told or no one tells you when you start a business here. And there's things, and the things you just find out by doing it. And it's really, and it seems like even now, like having been an entrepreneur now for, I don't know what, now 14 years in Germany, like every week I learned something new about one of my businesses that I didn't know I needed to do that, and I just got this letter that says I need to do this. And you're like, great, that would be really nice to know, like, beforehand.
So please let us know, like, what do you think are like the basic things people should be aware of it?
I don't know if there's like, I think, gosh, there's so many things, like.
Tell me like 3 that are different, for example, than US, that you saw in US would be like this, and then here is like,
Yeah, I think having a really good accountant is important, and that they're very hard to find also in Berlin. So that makes it difficult to run a business. And then when you get into like accounting, there's a lot less forgiveness for like little mistakes, and you have to kind of be proactive about, doing your accounting and filing your taxes. And one weird thing, like you have these sales tax, the VAT tax, which you're then supposed to like prepay and then get reimbursed. And kind of in the US, you would pay all your taxes like afterwards in the end, right? Like you kind of say, okay, this is what I did in the year. Let me pay this in the end. Whereas the tax authorities here expect you to pay everything up front, and then they'll give you back the money that, later. So it's like you need like a lot more cash flow for that, which is kind of tricky to then run a business, because a lot of your cash is just actually sitting at the tax authority in some sort of like escrow account that's going to come back to you hopefully someday when you find an accountant to do a yearly accounting paper for you, Yeah.
Cool, amazing, yeah.
Very interesting. So talking about founding company, I mean, you are one of the co-founders of Silicon Alley, and particularly talking about these differences between, different systems, but also different cultures, coming from US. And if I read correctly, the other co-founders were also US, with the US background, so kind of all foreigners. So how was that experience of foreigners founding companies in the early days of Berlin, where, today maybe we have also even official documents translated in German. Some, I mean, from German to English, but I imagine in 2007 there was no such thing, and no DeepL to rely upon. So, how was that experience?
I mean, that was the impetus for founding Silicon Valley. Is my co-founder and I both had startups that we started in Berlin, and because back then, like, the access to funding was almost non-existent in Berlin, we're like, okay, we're Americans, let's go over to Silicon Valley and like try and raise funding there. So we both, independent of each other, we hadn't talked about it. We just both realized we were both in Silicon Valley doing that, and we're like, oh, cool, like, let's meet up and hang out and compare experiences. And so we both spent maybe half a year, 8 months, maybe 10 months in the Valley, getting involved in the scene there. But then we both actually had managed to raise money back in Germany with the company. So we both came back. Again, we didn't coordinate it. We came back. Oh, you're back. Oh, wow, I'm back. Like, what happened? And we said, okay, well, we're here now. We've raised money. We've started these companies. Like, what can we do to like help the whole ecosystem and also help our companies grow and expand? And so we said, well, what worked in the Valley? Well, these like super simple meetups, let's just get smart people together and get them in the same room and network and share ideas. That was the goal, which seems like it happens all the time now, but like back then it was a novel idea.
Completely.
And so we just started Silicon Valley as this meetup, as a complete side project from what we were doing, and it exploded. Like, it was the right thing, right time. People were really looking for something like that. We had RTL come out and like film the second meetup because they were like, this is the startup scene in Berlin.
All the geeks, all the geeks in the room.
Yeah, and so then it kind of just evolved from there. I think that, we were Americans, but I think it's especially like a cultural thing of getting people out of their comfort zone and just sharing ideas. But I've found it's not necessarily you find that kind of opportunity in most experienced and like evolved startup ecosystems. But I've found now that in a lot of nascent startup ecosystems, there's always this initial reluctance to kind of get out there and share your ideas. But then once people start realizing that's the best way to like get their idea off the ground is actually to share it with as many people as they can, that nobody's going to steal their idea. The more likely scenario is somebody's going to help you with your idea or connect you to someone that's going to help you. And that was all we were trying to do then. And yeah, it was really well received. And then we kept trying to figure out what else the community needed and then kept building on top of that.
One question comes to mind, like this fear of not being stolen, the actual reality of not being stolen is something specific for the Berlin scene, or in Silicon Valley or other startup scenes that would be also the case?
No, I think like I mentioned, I think it's this. I see this in scenes that are not quite evolved, right? Mm-hmm. And people, and I don't know what it is. I haven't like done a sociological experiment and dove into it.
Going to meetups and saying, I have this idea, and see if 3 months later someone pops up.
No, but I think like the reality is like if someone's going to a meetup, they're not there to like, they're not there to be inspired by or like take someone else's idea. Sure. They're there to like offer something or help or be involved or share their idea. And so most of the time when you share your idea, you get useful help instead of like somebody going, oh, that's a really cool idea, I'm gonna go steal it and work on it, But 2007 was also the days of Rocket Internet, where they were literally stealing American ideas and rolling them out in Germany. So maybe there was a little aspect of that as well. But yeah.
But amazing. I mean, all of us, I think, in the room today, like when we came, we're all foreigners in Berlin. When we came to Berlin, I think all of us attended diligently Silicon Valley meetups, and they helped us not just, come with our ideas, get certain input, feedback, or join other people's ideas, but actually also make friends, get, peer groups. And I mean, I can personally say thank you for doing that, for kicking that off. And I actually recently went to one of your meetups after, years of sadly being away. And of course, there was also COVID. And I was amazed how many people there are.
Yeah.
There were quite some like faces I knew from before, which made me very happy to reconnect. But there were so many fresh people, and it still is that thing. Yeah. Like Silicon Valley monthly meetup is still the thing that you go as a newcomer to Berlin, right? So if anybody who's listening is about to come to Berlin, you know where to go now.
First Tuesday of every month at St. Oberholz and Rosenthaler Platz. It's the longest running tech event in Berlin at this point.
I've never been.
You've never been?
I've never been.
But this is the important part of having consistency, right?
Yeah,
is that
exactly.
like if it was a one-off thing and you've never been, you would never be able to go. But the fact that I can say, well, come next month, is I think the magic of an event like that.
And one question comes to my mind very quickly related to that. So there are still startups coming like to Berlin, like at which level? Like, do you think there is still a lot of startups coming? You think it's less? How you see this movement?
There was, I mean, a little slowdown from what I know from like official numbers from the city of Berlin. There was a little slowdown last year actually in like the number of startups being founded, but now it's back up to where it was, and I think it's something like a startup a day being founded or on average in Berlin. So, yeah, it's still happening. Short answer.
Like mushrooms after the rain.
Yeah, and I think we've, there's this concept of the innovation flywheel, and I think we've hit it where like, it's just going to be a constant, reinvestment, kind of invigoration of the ecosystem, and things are going to just keep growing and spinning from here. And I don't think it'll ever stop. It may change. I think most ecosystems kind of evolve over time, but I don't think it'll ever stop.
Now that you said that, like they went down and they're coming up again, one of our guests had a very good description of the startup movement. He said startups nowadays are like pop-up stores, right? And their perspective and their reality is that startups, the arrival of startups with a lot of investment, pushed a lot of people outside of their spaces, right? You as an insider, do you see any kind of movement or conversations on that sense, like on startups being more responsible business, because this thing of pop-up, I think, is the best description of it. I would like to know if from inside there is this kind of conversation in that sense.
Do you mean like in terms of the kind of social impact of startups?
Social impact or the vision of the sustainability of the business in itself, like, so it's not just a pop-up, like, is there this kind of conversation, or there's mostly the mindset is still like, let's make it, let's try, if it doesn't work, let's move on, like?
That's a tough question. I think the mentality in startups is still very much pop-up, like, but that's also the kind of mentality of like failing fast, right? Find something that you can flip that on its head. It's not necessarily failing fast. It's like find something that works quickly, right? And then scrap the things that don't work. Because I think if you're going to have a sustainable business, it needs to work. So if you can quickly find out that what you're doing doesn't work, then, instead of pumping more money into something that doesn't work, that is not sustainable, you're going to find something that does work that can actually grow a big business. So that's really the startup DNA is try things quickly, fail fast, and then in this iterative cycle to try and find something that actually works. And then in general, I mean, especially in Germany and in Europe, there's a movement to create more sustainable businesses that have more societal and ESG impact, and take those things into consideration much earlier on. And some of this is bottom-up driven, like because there's demand for that, there's an interest in that from founders, and some of that's also now really interestingly like top-down driven. So a lot of VCs actually put this into their term sheets to have like a diversity quota or responsibility and a sustainability impact. They do have to do ESG reporting, and that's actually even driven by the European government and federal government, that they have to do ESG reporting up, so they make their startups also do ESG reporting. So I think like there's a definitely more of a kind of a concentration of that as well from the whole ecosystem.
It's cool, and it's nice that comes also from VCs, right? Because they have the power to invest or not invest.
Yeah, I mean, where I'd love to see a little bit more like intentionality in the ecosystem is in the impact in Berlin, right, on our societal impact in Berlin. Like everybody talks about the raising cost of rent, But are startups really tech companies really doing anything to mitigate that? Not really. Like they're just paying their employees more, which kind of like exacerbates the problem. And I think
until they run out of money.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they leave and they leave the space.
Well, then then we pay them through the job center because they've earned such a high salary. They get a nice unemployment for a while, right? So like, but I think also the government they're getting smarter and they're getting better than I think what I've seen in the past as well. But they're playing catch up, and that's always a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
So, I want to dive a little bit deeper in this like innovation cycle, what you mentioned before, and particularly also right now, what we talked about, this iteration and in general in the ecosystem and stuff. But I feel like it's time for
questions out of the box, Travis.
Questions out of the box.
So please take the first box.
This one here?
Yeah, you can bring it there. Open it. And yeah, smooth.
Nice.
So just take one.
Take one question.
Yeah.
There are famous internet edgy ones, but very
Don't blame
random.
us if we get something.
Okay. Do I read?
Yes,
You
please
read
it out
you?
loud.
Yeah, read it out
Okay.
and then answer.
And then I answer the question.
Yeah.
You sure you don't want to answer?
I'm sure. Well, I could, but
Do you think you've made the most of your opportunities?
oh wow, that's a tough one. Yeah,
It's not good for Friday afternoon.
That's deep.
give me this one.
Think you've made the most of your opportunities? It's a very philosophical question in a way as well, right? I mean, because you'd have to say yes, because, I mean, I'm a big believer in no regrets, and there is no there's no could have, there's no should have, there's only kind of what's next. So I'd say, I made the most out of my opportunities because that was all I could make of them at the
There
time.
was any decision that you took a path, like that you made it, and to this day you still think, what if I have gone in a different direction?
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah.
You want to share one?
There's like lots of, can we swear on it?
Yeah,
There's lots
yeah,
of
of course. It's,
we have these like fuck up nights,
Yeah,
where we
yeah.
share like stories of
Yeah.
failure, which I think is really healthy and important
Yeah, for sure.
ecosystem. And there's lots of decisions I've made where I go, wow, it would have been better. Like, for example, in one of our startups where we were building this social wish list application, we kind of got to the point where we were about to launch the product, and then I had this like crazy idea of like maybe we actually need to build this other thing that pivots the product in this direction, but the investors had invested in like this previous vision, and I got it in my head that like, no, this is the real thing, this is the thing, and I don't even remember why it was, but I really pitched it hard to my co-founders to the point where they actually said, okay, we'll do this thing. And we did end up, we kind of ran out our burn rate just basically developing product and trying to get to this other new vision. And I was like, in the end, it's like, shit, we should have just built what the investors invested in. Then built that, launched that, then we could have raised money for the next vision instead of kind of getting so wrapped up in it early on. And so I think there's countless experiences like that where had I not made that mistake, but then, that's a learning too. Now I kind of go, okay, let's see the plan through that we have now, and then we'll do the next plan.
Yeah. So the learn was go step by step. How would you quote the learning from that? Because I find it's very
I think
relevant.
it's a lot of don't second guess your plan until you have a real reason to second guess it, and the plan we had was a good plan, and it was a good product and a good start, and the next thing we could have built could have helped that, but yeah, it was just don't second guess yourself too early, and until you've kind of proven that the first plan you had didn't work.
Very good learning. I think it's also, such an important thing for also everybody else going on those ventures. Validate before you toss it away or before you make next decisions, right?
Should we do another one or should we move on?
No, let's do another one. You never know what you're going to get, so it might be
Maybe
another philosophical
maybe a lighter
one, but
one?
it might be a lighter
funny
one.
one. Yeah.
Okay, there's one.
Yeah?
Have you ever lied to get ahead? Okay, which lie can I talk about?
Yeah, exactly. Because
Yes.
yeah, exactly. The answer is everybody could say yes, no doubt. The question is, it's just a line to buy a croissant, or
Yeah.
it's...
Maybe on a really, not necessarily a lie, but a interesting anecdote that's, I don't know, maybe I let people kind of believe a lie.
You didn't stop them.
Yeah, and that was when we were raising money for startups back. This was the same startup actually. And we were pitching a lot of German investors. I was pretty fluent in German by that point, but I would come in and like do my American act, and then sometimes they would speak. The investors would speak together in German, or they would speak to my German co-founder in German, and I would just kind of sit there going like, let them believe that I didn't speak German. And that you could kind of always get other insights, right? Into what,
It's it's like acting like a spy, no? You get another level of information.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a cool one.
Do you
Nice.
still do it today sometimes?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes. Like if people don't ask and we start speaking English, and then I'll just speak German with them later. Oh, you didn't know you spoke German.
So I wanted to get back to what we talked before, out of the box questions, which was about the innovation cycles, about, you know, how also as an answer to one of your questions, what you had, you know, this pivoting moments. And like, if we maybe think about Silicon Alley and like talk about, you know, the community there. You already mentioned you started with a meetup, but then you've done a lot of other things that the community or the ecosystem here needed. So maybe you can tell us a little bit on where is Silicon Alley now and why is it doing that? Like kind of, if we kind of segue to today's world, to the present, if you could maybe introduce that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like I mentioned, Silicon Alley it's a very interesting company because it's not like an intentional startup in that like we started it to solve as a startup to solve a problem like you talked about, like this pop-up. It was this community-driven side project that we had that has kind of just grew in scope and scale until it took over my life, right? But the really nice thing about that is because it has this origin of not really trying to make money and not really trying to like you know, have a specific agenda, but really just fostering a community. It has a lot of authenticity, which is really, I think, amazing. And so we've grown over the years just kind of, but always with this intention of like, okay, what does the Berlin startup community need now? And how can we facilitate that? And how can we help? And, you know, in the beginning, it was after the meetup, we said, okay, well, there's all these amazing people here now. We've just met them. They're at our meetup now every month, but nobody knows they're here. And why is that? Because there was no news being written about the startup scene in English in Berlin. So we started the first English language news site about tech in Berlin. And that then exposed the ecosystem. We were able to kind of like expose startups beyond the German media. And then over the years, we've done lots of different things. We did a partnership with Factory and built an innovation campus in Mitte. We ran it was 4 years of early stage incubator called the Berlin Founders Fund that was funded by the Berlin Senate to help like first time founders get off their ground and kind of give them runway to get from kind of idea to first fundraise. And then that led us to this new stage that we're in where we've now a year ago, actually this month, we partnered with Fraunhofer Heinrich Hertz Institute, where we are today, to solve a new problem that, to solve an old problem in a new way, let's say. But it's one we've always identified in the scene is that there's a real lack of connection between the research institutions, universities, and the startup scene. And there's a big knowledge gap there. And what we're doing here now is trying to get more of that research and that technology, because Germany is always at the forefront of like research, but they're at the forefront of the research, but not necessarily the commercialization of it. And they're always using like the solar panel as the example, where the solar panel was developed and designed and researched in Germany. But Germany was so slow to commercialize it that China just said, we'll take that. And now every solar panel is made in China, right? So that's the piece of the puzzle we're trying to solve now. And it's kind of our full-time focus. We're still doing the meetups and still doing other community activity because that's core to the business and core to also this connection and sharing this knowledge between the startup ecosystem and academics. But yeah, it's our mission now to kind of change the culture within the research institution, this one research institution at first, and then hopefully go broader, and introduce entrepreneurship as a alternative, let's say, to PhDs or other academic career paths. Explain why it's beneficial, why it's a great thing to do, and help that transition of more technology, in more of this kind of deep technology that's researched here, into the startup ecosystem. So it's a really big, heavy lift, and that's also why it's like we're going to focus on that for now. But it's a really cool time to be doing it because there's a big movement in the entire ecosystem and the entire country to bring more academic research into commercialization. So yeah, we're super excited about it, and it's kind of leveled up everything we're doing. Yeah.
Nice. I mean, I didn't know, of course, like preparing for this interview, I looked a little bit more, and I was surprised to read that it's now the largest VC funding category in Europe. And also just Germany as a government has billions planned or already invested or planned, I'm not certain on that, for further development of deep tech. But maybe first you can tell for the ones who might not know what deep tech
like me
really means.
There's a difference between tech and deep tech.
Yeah,
it sounds like electronic music genres.
Yeah, can you tell me?
I play deep tech.
Can you tell me what's the difference between a deep house and
house?
And house? Can you?
Hey, I'm a
yes,
musicologist, so...
No, I've been reading about, so house is kind of an evolution of disco, and was more happy, more kind of simple harmonies. And then there was this guy, American black guy, I forgot his name, that started to bring more jazz harmonies into the house. Mm-hmm. So people start to tell him, hey man, this shit sound deep, Okay. And that's how deep house kind of started, the expression of deep house. So it was the evolution of the harmonies, not so much like power piano, happy chords, progression, to more into minors and kind of jazzy progressions.
Okay.
And
so
then
more into the musicality of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to use your analogy.
Nice.
And I'm going to try and then use the same metaphor for
tech and deep tech.
Yeah. So tech has been like, in the past, it's been a lot of software, right? It's like iPhone apps and like e-commerce and kind of these consumer-based products, and building businesses on the infrastructure that we talked about earlier that was like built in 2007 and beyond, 1994 to 2007, right? Building businesses on top of that. Now, deep tech is kind of saying, okay, there's the businesses work, having online businesses and connected, that sort of stuff works, but the underlying like infrastructure layer can use improvements, right? So this all kind of started a little bit back with like blockchain and crypto, right? That people, there's actually other ways you can kind of build internet infrastructure. You can kind of connect systems in different ways with blockchain instead of kind of doing it the way that it had been done previously. And then AI comes around and it's like, well, okay, now we actually need like insane computing power that scales beyond the kind of stuff that we've been able to achieve with Moore's Law, right? Like that's kind of hitting its limit where like we can't, the technology is not scaling, or the hardware is not scaling enough, fast enough to meet the technological demands. And so that's kind of where deep tech is. It's kind of building that new underlying infrastructure layer, or utilizing a new infrastructure layer of the internet to build technological businesses or serve technological businesses as well. So it's a lot of B2B as well. And then as older businesses also are kind of connecting online or trying to digitize their processes, it's also kind of serving that transitionary period to help like these big like industrial players, middle SMEs and stuff, transform their businesses into kind of like future businesses. So there's a lot of, so deep tech is broad. It's like, there's a lot of things that, is it deep tech, is it not? Some people define it differently. Like we don't do any biotech, but biotech is a big part of deep tech. But it can involve everything from like AI and deep like AI, especially the mechanics of AI, not necessarily building like the new AI enabled software, but the mechanics of AI to like space tech to energy and infrastructure, mobility, kind of a lot of these like really hard technological problems.
So would be correct to say in a simplified way that tech is more connected to software and deep tech is more connected to hardware and infrastructures?
Yes. Yeah. I would. That's a definitely a good way to say it. Although there is like a layer that sits also like a software layer that also connects to the
Of course.
hardware or the computing power or something like that. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more hardware in deep tech.
Cool, amazing.
Or physical things,
Yeah.
let's say. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I have to say, I thought I knew what deep tech is, but now I know another side of it. Like, I'll be honest. Now I know better.
If you
or
cannot
more.
touch, it's not deep tech.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah,
Well, there's some of these AI algorithms that I've seen are
yeah.
Well, but
Very
like for what I
theoretical.
understood, the AI is still kind of the software part of the, like what you said, like the algorithm is the software part of the deep tech, and then there's the deep tech development of the computers that can run this AI, right?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I'd say that the whole AI field, though, is deep. So there's also improvements you can make to like the models themselves, which is purely software and purely ones and zeros and programming. Like, for example, here at Fraunhofer Heinrich Institute, we have a really big explainable AI department. So what they're just trying to explain why models make the decisions they do. And so they're developing software that explains how the inner workings of these AI models are working. So that's deep tech because it's deep in that system, but it's
Still software.
It's still software.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so one a little bit more naive explanation that I found was closely related to academia and research, right? So everything that requires either scientific or further research, standard research approach, could be classified under deep tech. Now, I'm not sure if that's somebody trying to expand the category, to be able to tap into those VC funds focusing on it, but that's one way that I felt a bit more naive, as I said. Like,
Yeah.
I think yours is much more, accurate and
Yeah,
more
I hate
descriptive,
locking
right?
it into the idea
Yeah.
that it has to come from a research institute
Yeah.
or has to come from academia. Like, as an entrepreneur and the best entrepreneurs
Yeah.
you know in the world dropped out of university,
Yeah.
Or were kicked out also, right?
Yeah,
So
I
both
would
of
love
them.
to think that it can come from anywhere.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Where is it coming from, and how you're also helping actually leverage that exact, infrastructure and knowledge of academia in the concept of Fraunhofer Institute here, and your programs.
Okay, so what we're doing here, which is, I'd say, unique, and we have the really unique opportunity to be doing it here at HHI. Well, let me back up a little bit first to explain where we are. So Fraunhofer is Germany's largest applied research institution. There's 76 Fraunhofer institutes that are kind of like almost like independent franchises in a way. Playing in the same league of like Fraunhofer, right? So there's like a centralized authority that manages a lot of the stuff, but each of the institutes is kind of autonomous in its to some extent. And Heinrich Hertz Institute is one of those institutes here in Berlin, and one of the more successful of the Fraunhofer institutes. The claims to fame here are we developed the MPEG video compression format, so like all these bits are going through a codec that is paying a license to maintain this place. So, and then a couple other video codecs, and some other technologies. We also won 2 Emmys, which is pretty
Oh,
cool.
wow.
For these
Nice.
know
video
that.
Which codec
technical,
is? Which codecs are? Do you know?
MPEG, the MPEG codec,
Ah, seriously?
and then the VVC codec.
Okay.
Yeah.
They were developed here.
Yeah,
Amazing.
majority was developed here. Yeah.
Amazing.
But traditionally, so like amazing research being done here, and specifically in 5 different fields. So AI, photonic networks, photonic components, wireless networks, and image and video. And historically amazing research being done, but they would spin out maybe one company a year into like the private sector. So all this amazing research, but it wasn't getting spun out. And there was a couple reasons for that. One was like there wasn't a culture and no kind of like real good support network for bringing those technologies to market. there's like a disconnect between, academia and private sector, which is this thing we're trying to solve, which I think is endemic in a lot of Europe. And three, like the terms that startups were getting from the institute were not really VC friendly. There was like way too much control, way too much equity taken, all this sort of stuff. And we luckily came or got in touch with HHI here when they had the director who was very visionary in this idea, pushed for new startup terms. So he said, we want to create more startups. We need new terms, and they were approved. So we have brand new terms that are much more startup and VC friendly for any company that spins out of here. I can go into the details if you want, or they're on our website, but basically, like, we're using virtual equity, which is not real equity. We're taking max 20%, but usually around 10% in virtual equity, and then the startups have full autonomy of their company once it spins out. And we have like no board seats, no other control over the company, which is way more friendly. And we started earlier this year. In January 2024, we actually officially launched the program, and startups founders can either come to us from within the institute, or actually external startups can come, and we can see if there's a match with the technology that's within the institute. And either of them can then work with us for up to 2 years. We pay the full salaries of the founders. They get office space, computing resources, everything that you would get as like an employee of the institute. And we work with them and mentor them to get from kind of that early idea to their first fundraise, and then they spin out and create their own companies. And so it's early days. We have about 5 companies now in the portfolio. One of them announced at this current point. But we're really excited about the future for that as well.
And what startups that would like to work with academia should know? Like, what are the basics, language and operational things that, like, because as you said before, there is a gap, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess that, startups would need some guidelines, right? What do you suggest them?
So I think like external startups that want to work with academia, you have to understand the kind of mentality of academia, and it is like research for research's sake. So they have the answers to a lot of problems, right? So if you say, well, I want to know why an AI model makes decisions, it does. Like, we can tell you that. But we don't necessarily have the software development skills to say we can take that idea and then like put it into like scalable software. And so I think that's where the translation has to happen, and have to be patient and kind of like, okay, I'm going to understand how your stuff works. Now I'm going to figure out, can I actually scale it and build it into my product? And that's where like a lot of the hard work is in bringing the solutions into actually like scalable business models and stuff like that. But then also like the other side is, I think, because academics and researchers are really focused on solving research problems, like, can this be done? There's not a lot of thought of like, what's the actual need for this in the real world? And startups look at the other way around, right? They're like, I want to solve this problem in the real world. I need to go find a technical solution. So it's actually really, beneficial in that sense. If you can say, I have solutions that we can apply your technology to, like, is there a fit? But that's where like that dialogue is. And the researchers are open to it. They're always excited to hear how because they don't want to they want to solve the research problem, but they also want to see it like
be used. Done with it, yeah.
That's cool. So you would say that in a simple way, startups should be more patient because the rhythm and the way things work in academia is a little slower. Yeah. And in the other hand, as a positive thing, the researchers, they're open to collaborate. It's not like, oh, you're Danny coming here, and so they're kind of open and they want to. Yeah. That's cool.
I mean, we just did a survey internally here, and one of the biggest reasons we identified that researchers do what they do is because they want to create impact, which is really cool. Because I think that's like totally matches with what startups want to do, right? They want to create impact and create change, and so that's a mentality match, but like the ways they're both operating needs like a lot of translation and help.
And that's where you come, and you and Silicon Valley come in place.
That's where
right?
we're trying to trying to do that. Yeah.
Nice.
Amazing. I mean, I love what you touched upon, particularly this like culture change, right? And one thing that you shared that I will quote you again upon, which is that you have a mandate to disrupt the culture here, which I think I just find it amazing. And I think it's such an important thing for institutions like this, right? I mean, we've seen, at least in Germany, some of this being done on the corporate level, but I think the academia, at least what we've seen in Berlin and in Germany, hasn't necessarily always been present, right, compared to maybe some other ecosystem. I mean, you have experience in San Francisco, I mean, in the Valley overall. So what are some of the reasons, or what are some of the struggles that Berlin and German's ecosystem on the topic of collaboration between academia and researchers and startups have that maybe in other ecosystems don't, or they overcome it?
I mean, I think you hear these amazing examples of like Stanford and MIT and Columbia, like having this amazing collaboration between private sector and academia, but this is like, that's it. You know, I think it's not just a German problem. Like most academic institutions have trouble with that technology transfer and trouble with that exchange. And I mean, it's endemic. It's, you know, you see it in Germany, and I think maybe there's like, but there are also some places where it's working really well in Germany, like the TU München with the Unternehmertum is definitely the leader in that in Germany. And so in Berlin we're a little bit behind, but you know, there's a huge initiative to do that. But I see like culture change as it's something that you know happens over time, but it also happens. And so it takes time. You have to be patient and see like the long tail effects, but it happens through people because culture is created by people. And so people also, and you don't want to like disrupting the culture. I don't want to disrupt the culture. I want to change the culture, or like at least expose the culture, because I think also the two cultures have values of their own and benefits, but we need to be able to kind of also understand each other's culture and be able to kind of exchange. And for that we need role models, I think is the most important thing. Like, and that's what we're trying to also do, is bring in role models that people can talk to and see themselves and say, oh, you were an academic and you created a company. How did that go? Oh, wow. And you sold it for how much money? And oh, wow. And you stopped your PhD to do that. Why? Oh, but you made like millions. That's an interesting idea. Maybe I could see myself in that role. And to have like the professors then like talk to other professors, maybe from these, you know, Stanford or MIT, to go like, oh yeah, okay, I can keep my academic career, but I can also like be an advisor on companies and make a ton of money on the side. That's exciting, and see these ideas like go into the world. And so that's where we're trying, I think, through people to you know, change these culture, and especially through kind of creating role models and exposing role models and having those conversations.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I have the feeling that one very important element for this to happen, that happens in MIT, Stanford, they're locally situated inside the culture, right? Like there's no literally physically integrator, or they are not integrated into the scene. Because I have the feeling that, because if it's culture is people, if people they are not hanging out together, it's very difficult to transfer culture, right? So it's correct that there are these universities, they are integrated into the lifestyle of startups, or the other way around, startups ecosystem are built around them. Yeah,
I mean, in the successful institutions from what I know. I mean, unfortunately didn't attend Stanford.
Never too late.
I've been there.
But that's for that it's enough to answer the question.
Yeah, but from what I understand, I mean, I think it's a much more like free flowing. Exchange of people and ideas, right? So you can, and this is actually something we borrowed here as well, is that if you're in Stanford or if you're in HHI and you want to start a startup, you can go and start the startup and be given kind of a leave of absence for up to 2 years, and then if their startup fails in 2 years, you can come back, right? So it's kind of like understanding. So that's an understanding from the university of understanding the startup culture, is that you need to go try something, you need to fail, but we need to be like forgiving and supportive of that failure. And so I think that's, it's like there's a lot more integration in that sense. But that also, happens over time, and with success stories and people taking risks and trying it out and proving that it works. And I don't know if it's necessary. And yeah, I mean, they teach entrepreneurship much more in Stanford. It's much more kind of like part of the curriculum and stuff. And we're getting there in Germany too, right? There's entrepreneurship as part of the curriculum in the TU now, but I think it's optional as well. So like you could kind of go, well, maybe we make that mandatory, you know, or something like that as well. Those are all options that I know are being considered. But yeah, I think we're pretty well integrated in terms of like physical space, and then like the events now we're hosting, we're having much more of a now we host a deep tech night every month as well here. So we do our meetup in Mitte and our deep tech night here to kind of
balance the east and the west.
Yeah,
And
east and the west
also-
and the ecosystems. But you know, there's the good mix now of researchers and entrepreneurs coming to that as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
I come more from corporate innovation, so the whole academia thing is quite new to me. So, but one thing that was always a challenge when you're trying to introduce a startup to a corporate environment was the fact that many startups are foreigners. And one thing that I do know about at least German academia is that there is like a lot of foreigners or people with foreign backgrounds who are part of the being researchers, being part of it. So I'm wondering if that's something that speaks, to being able to merge these two worlds a little bit more, that there's even more glue, in between that would help, or
Yeah,
what's
awesome.
your take on that?
I'm really happy you brought that up because I think
Yeah?
that's a. I mean, I think the reason for Berlin's success, the reason for any successful startup ecosystem is the diversity of people and the diversity of ideas, and it's driven by different factors. And as you said, academia here, universities are very diverse, and it's awesome, and it's young and diverse and dynamic, and I think that will lend itself really well to creating this cross-cultural collaboration and creating a dynamic startup scene. And if we go back to the example of Stanford, especially from my American perspective, I think we go all the way back to like the things I love and hate about Germany, is that Germany, it's pretty easy to get a visa here, right? A work visa, right? It's pretty easy to get integrated. It's pretty easy to kind of like land and it's not perfect, but it's like coming from the U.S. side, it's perfect compared to the U.S., right? Like it's impossible to get a visa in the U.S., right? In any sense, but the reason that like Stanford has such a dynamic and a lot of these universities have such dynamic innovation ecosystems is because the only visa that's easier to get in the U.S. is a student visa. So they're actually doing the hard work of the government there of bringing in a diverse international population by getting them in as students, and then they can kind of spin out into companies, right? So I think you're exactly correct. These institutions where there's a lot of diversity of people and ideas are going to be the most successful. And luckily in Germany, we can have a good enough visa policy and immigration policy that we don't have to rely on the universities to do that. But that's, I think, the analogy of why it works. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I find this topic very interesting. And actually, earlier this year during Green Tech Festival, the Minister of Finance for Germany was speaking about how in Germany we have a bit of a challenge on, let's say, bigger corporate and enterprise and SME level in the C-suites. We don't have foreign immigrants or foreign background, like people with foreign background. We're comparing to US economy. You have under Fortune 500 companies at something around, I mean, don't hold me against the numbers, but below 15% or something of all the companies are actually have foreign-based CEOs or C-suite or board members, and there seems to be a bit of a, you can, as a, so to say, from my perspective, as a foreigner, you can do certain amounts in Germany and you have a lot of abilities, but there's a slight gap that, I have high hopes that startups will be able to kind of overcome and bridge that, right? To add that.
Yeah, I'd definitely be curious to see how the C-suites of startups make up with the C-suites of, German industrial players for sure. Yeah, but I think it's super important. And unfortunately, we're getting there in Germany. But diversity still kind of just means more women. And you're like, yeah, that's very important. Gender balancing is super important. But diversity is a very big topic, And you're starting to see also a gripe that I had for the longest time is the German Startups Association. You looked at their board and it was all Germans, and you're like, guys, startups are like 50% foreigners. You need to put more foreigners on your board, you know, and they've just started to do that. Now they have like a few more foreign born people on the board of the German Startups Association. So I think like the more representation you have as foreigners, I think the better for everyone. But, you know, Berlin is also a little bit of an outlier in Germany, right? It's way more diverse of a population than a lot of German cities. So that's kind of the weird situation we're in Berlin.
And do you have the capacity to do this here now in Fraunhofer through your program? And if yes, how would you do that?
I mean, we focus on diversity and make it part of our criteria when evaluating companies. There's a few diversity initiatives within the institution. I mean, luckily, like you said, I think it is rather diverse in terms of international backgrounds. I think research is still rather male heavy in terms of gender. But there's a lot of focus on increasing that, and it's also, I think, just a historically systemic problem, right? Like, because more males were educated in STEM before, now they're going to kind of age out as the focus of educating more women in STEM that's been taking place for the last 20 years has like bears fruit. We'll see way more women researchers as well. So, I think, I mean, we focus on it. It's not something I think we can be doing too many things at once. So we don't try and push for it, but we make sure it's part of our kind of culture as well.
Amazing. So now I'd like to jump into the question out of the guest book. Our last guest wrote a question, not knowing that would be for you. So I'd like you to open it.
Okay.
And read the question and answer it.
To this page here.
Yeah.
Definitely apropos to the topic we were just having. Are you excluding people sometimes? Is the question. It's like the lying one, yes. I mean, not intentionally, but I think we are also, we're always excluding some people. We're missing some aspect. I mean, I think, this whole equity topic is a... People can get really heated about it, but I think the most important thing is it's always a journey for everyone, and to be forgiving and like go. I'm getting better at identifying where I'm excluding people or excluding or using maybe not the right language, but also kind of like need to be humble and ask for forgiveness when I make a mistake, and also forgive others when they make a mistake, and then understand it's a journey. We're all trying to get better together, and I think that's a much nicer way than to kind of like cancel people and stuff like that.
I love your take on the answer, which it's very connected to the times we're living. And I would first like answer this question like that, because I always had the vision that exclusion is something negative.
Mm-hmm.
But this comes from Martin Nijere, and he works with community. He has the Riverside Studios. He works in factory. And he explained that his vision, like curation, it's equal exclusion, right? Mm-hmm. He was explaining this concept that it's not bad to exclude people, because if you want, and I love this example, if you want to create like a safe space, you need to leave out the people that don't fit into this safe space or don't respect the rules of this space, right? Mm-hmm. So it turned around the visions, like, well, it's exclusion equals curation, right? So nowadays we see exclusion directly, feel guilty. I probably made a mistake. I probably said something wrong. But I love this question and the concept that he brought about. It's taking care of what you're building or the people that is around you. Mm-hmm. That's the perspective of the exclusion.
That's a cool perspective for sure. I think the connotation of exclusion is always normally negative, right?
So maybe from that perspective, do you think you would have a different answer?
Yeah, definitely.
Would you like to talk about it?
I mean, I think in terms of kind of curation of a community. I mean, a community, like when I've seen communities fail, it's because they're too broad. Right? You have a community means that it's not just people physically in the same space. That's not a community. That's just like people, right? Like I mean, I guess that's the smallest amount of through line you can have is we are literally physically in the same space, but that's a pretty loosely connected community. Whereas if you have like a through line where everybody shares the same values and the same vision or something like that, that's going to be a much more like cohesive and active and community. And for us, you know, especially in the startup side of things, we're really looking for like risk takers. I think that's also people who want like security and want to like not take risks is not who we're looking for, right? We're really looking for people that want to change the world and get out there and take risks. So that's, that's probably the major like kind of exclusionary factor. You know, if you say, well, I just want security and I want a stable job, and you're like, there's other places in HHI you can go do that, sure, you know, or other places, but like not here. Not like here we want you to take a risk. We want you to like be driven and like, you know, want to start a company.
Amazing. I love that you brought back the community aspect, because there's a question that I would love to hear your perspective. Even for myself, now I'm involved in projects related to community. What are the challenges of building a community? What do you think there are the key success factors for building a community?
What are the key success factors for building a community?
Or the challenges that you should pay attention so you have a successful community? Yeah. Like, and think about your own path, right?
Yeah, I mean, community building is difficult, right? Because it's always hard to like monetize a community too, right? Like a lot of people are kind of building a community and then trying to monetize it, and that's where like as soon as you kind of like are like trying to make profit off the community, then it gets, you know, then the community members go like, wait a minute, like why am I doing this? And yeah, so I think that's definitely a challenge. Is how do you? But you need to sustain the community, right? And that usually involves money. So how do you do that? And there's definitely many ways to do it. But I think, you know, the most important thing is that finding your kind of common values and your common kind of vision, and understanding what's the glue that holds them together, and so then you can kind of identify, oh, these are the people that we need to find that are interested in being part of this community. And then I always find you have to kind of give first, right? You can't ask first. You have to kind of give and then hope that it comes back when you need it. But that's like, I think, like whether it's a professional community or social community, it has to be about kind of solving problems and helping others before you kind of ask for something yourself. And then I think that's really healthy.
And if you would have to monetize a community, do you have any advice on how to do it?
I mean, it's still, I haven't seen you know, we tried forever, and, you know, especially smaller communities, it's, much more difficult. I've seen it done through like content, so like paying for content. I've seen it done through, you know, memberships. I've seen it done through events. I don't know if there's a silver bullet. You know, space worked well as well when we worked with Factory. I think that's also, you know, providing a space where people, then they actually get something physical. They go, oh, this is like a place I can go and meet with my community. I'll pay for that. Sponsorship also sometimes works, but it's a pain, right, to keep selling to sponsorships. I think honestly, like, a community kind of needs to exist aside something else that makes money, right? Because that's the best kind of community, is that it's just like purely for the sake of helping each other.
So would you say that, for example, in Silicon Alley, actually you don't monetize the community, but the existence and the power of the community attract business?
Exactly, yeah. Okay. Yeah, our monetization is through the startups and the startup program and that community, right? Because they're getting real value add for what they're giving us, right? In terms of real money and real advice and real, you know, resources. And the community is how we power the kind of funnel to get the startups in there.
Amazing. Cool.
So I want to talk a bit about the future in the last part, or like what might be some of your takes on the future, a bit about Berlin and our city, but also in general about the ecosystem that particularly, with the current programs between Fraunhofer and Silicon Valley you're driving for. So maybe to ask that as a question, what are some of the thinking about academia and startups and further ecosystem development from this perspective, what are some of the things that are missing that you might want to inspire the rest of the ecosystem to pick up upon so you guys can continue doing what you want to do?
Mm-hmm. What are the things that are missing? I mean, there's still a lot of, I think, from an academia perspective, like introducing these ideas of entrepreneurship early on would be really, same like we did with like STEM for women. It's like, let's get, entrepreneurship into the curriculum earlier. So people, even if you're doing pure research, maybe you take like one business class, so at least you like understand what it's like to run a business or even a startup. So I think that knowledge gap is still missing. It exists, but it's also fragmented, right? Which I think is a good thing. I don't think we need to centralize all the knowledge, especially in an ecosystem as dynamic as Berlin. But we need more academics and researchers to kind of understand what it means to be a startup, and also I think have the right language for it. Because what I'm, especially now this year here so far at HHI, like what I've really learned is like the startup journey is very similar to like a research journey, right? You have a hypothesis, which is like what you would have in research, which is like this problem you want to solve, and you maybe have an idea for the solution. Then you go out and you collect samples and you do tests and you develop like software and things to like test this hypothesis. Then you're gonna go, okay, did that experiment work? Did it not? Okay, now we're gonna like rejig the experiment, try it again, analyze the data. Like the two journeys are very, very similar. It's just like the language is different and the kind of expectations and how you interact and is different. But I think scientists and founders are not that dissimilar in terms of kind of like we talked about, like their goals and their vision and what they want to achieve and how they're doing it. Even they just need the right kind of like tools to be able to understand how to like make that jump or switch back and forth. I don't know what that looks like practically, from an ecosystem perspective or what, but that's what we're trying to build here is build a space where we can have those conversations, find the role models that can inspire the next generation, and then do that hard work of kind of building that knowledge as well.
Nice.
Did that answer the question?
Well, yes, I think it does. Maybe not with practical things, that people listening are like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this now. But of course, it leaves a lot of room. I mean, there's so many activities, not just maybe within the Fraunhofer Institute or with other institutes under the Fraunhofer, as well as other research bodies, can, adopt. But I think, for us coming from, let's say, a general startup ecosystem is maybe not to be afraid, right? Maybe also even if you're not part of, deep tech, maybe do come and maybe you identify certain areas where you want to take part.
That's a really good point. And I think also understanding, like, I think that's also a mistake we made in the beginning is like, we were so in love with the startup ecosystem. We're like, we'll come here and we'll just like show them and everyone will realize how great it is. And you're like, no, you got to meet people where they are. And so I think that's a cultural thing we're undergoing as a team to go, okay, no, we need to like not necessarily dominate with our culture, but like mix the two, And so what we've also I've now advised like my team and also anyone at HHI that's watching this, please, like, I will go to lunch with you any day of the week. I would love to go to lunch with you. Just ping me. I want to have lunch and I want to talk, right? And that's also like how, what happens in academia is like lunch is a really big thing. And it wasn't in the startup world also. If you're watching at HHI, you didn't understand. Like, we work through lunch, and then we go, and then we have beers at the end of the day, right? But like this lunch conversation is a really important part of like academic culture. So anybody in startups that wants to get in touch with academia, like, invite them to lunch. It's kind of that simple.
But you see, that's very good practical example of the cultural difference and the language, right? One stops in the middle and go for lunch, and the other work through and go at the end of the day for beers.
Yeah.
You know, it's exactly the same thing, but just switch it out, right? And these are the little details that academia and startup scene needs to learn how to
Not to say that
navigate.
academics don't drink beers as well.
Oh, no, for sure.
But you need to ease it up with lunch first to get to there.
Yeah.
Nice. I mean, maybe to look into Berlin, right? So not only, you know, the sector between startups and academia and how to bridge that, but thinking about Berlin and its future. What are some of the trends that you see, you know, shaping the future of Berlin?
Shaping the future of Berlin as a city itself.
As a concept of an ecosystem, I don't want to constrain to the walls of a city. Not to say that there's no more walls, but
Yeah, I mean, from a, you know, Berlin's been interesting because I give this talk also on like how called From Stasi to Startups, where you look at the history of Berlin and it's failed a lot and had to restart, right? A lot over its history. And now we're in this phase where we restarted sometime around the fall of the wall and reunification, and then a little bit after that, where there was no real industry in Berlin. And now like it's like tech and government are like the industries now in Berlin. And that's shaping things. And I don't know how long that will last or if new industries will come in. But I think, you know, like I said in the beginning, I think Berlin as a tech ecosystem is going to stay. And so that will continue to grow and evolve as tech evolves. And now I think this focus on deep tech is really fascinating because there's a lot of, for a multitude of reasons, there's a lot of kind of pressure being put from the federal government, from the local governments, from everybody on this deep tech topic, right? We need to win this deep tech topic. And if you kind of extrapolate our definition of deep tech, that's going to create some interesting changes in Berlin from like, you know, maybe we'll start to see a lot more biotech labs come up. Maybe we'll start to see like more industry like Tesla or like computing centers show up or like energy infrastructure, all these kind of like interesting like developments that might come out of that. And I think the challenge for Berlin, obviously, is to, like we said as well, to stay livable and sustainable, because I think that's the reason where we can attract people to Berlin, attract amazing people to a city where the incomes are half or a quarter of what you'd get in London, is because of the lifestyle. And if we can't keep that lifestyle healthy and exciting, we're going to lose that ability to attract people. And that's a really big risk. And I mean, but, you know, I think people are aware of that. I would love to see more emphasis on that. But, you know, doing things like UNESCO heritage protecting the nightclubs is a pretty cool move, right? Like, so I think that's I think that's where it will shift. I just hope it stays, you know, diverse and welcoming and free, and like I think that's also something, you know, that Berlin has a lot of freedom, and you're kind of free to express yourself, and I hope that stays. Yeah.
If you could create a utopia for Berlin, how would it look like?
My utopia?
Yeah, of course, it's your answering.
My utopia would include like some mountains and an ocean near Berlin. So
that would be amazing.
Let's start with that.
Imagine going from the Spree to the ocean.
Yeah. That would be great. But I think, you know, a place where it's still welcome to take risks. I mean, that's also why I think Berlin, because of its nature of having failed, and it was a place you could come take risks, right? And that was what created the startup scene, is because it was the only place in Germany that was much more forgiving of risk, right, than other places. And so a place where you can kind of come express yourself however you want, take risks, and then, you know, not be penalized for taking those risks. It would be my kind of utopia, and that it stays livable and not too you know, overwhelmed with too focused on money or one specific sector that, you know, corrupts, you know, the kind of real estate market and everything, which is, it's getting close now when you start to see all the big office high rises that are being built, and you're like, cool, like, why? You know, I thought we got rid of offices in COVID. and also like, you know, leadership in Berlin that really gets Berlin and gets that kind of international, cosmopolitan, free lifestyle and leans into that and fosters it. Yeah. Otherwise, it's pretty great, right?
Yeah.
And we got great parks and like nice apartments and.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, a little bit more dynamic nature around would be great.
Yeah,
but,
so basically skipping what we have and then bringing the ocean and the mountains closer, no?
yeah, with a little bit more conscious, intentional leadership at the top, and I think we're good.
Amazing. Cool. So now it's the time for you to become our guest producer.
Okay.
And what we're going to do here is make a track from scratch. And this track is going to serve as the soundtrack for the episode. So every time a music comes in is this track.
Okay.
And so let's put our headphones and let's start. So the first element we should pick up is the speed, right, of the song. So I'm going to play the click and you tell me quicker or faster, quicker or slower.
Little faster.
Oh yeah, baby.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah?
Okay.
Would you like to start with drums, bass, chords, melodies?
Definitely drums. I think.
Okay. So let's choose a sound. You tell me one you like, huh?
Oh gosh, it's like thunder. I think I liked. Ooh, that was good with the rim shot. Yeah, that's good. I like the rim shot. Okay.
Okay. What would be the next element?
Then we need the bass. Then definitely.
So and a kick, right?
Yeah. Kick. Yeah, there's something in the kick drum. Do the yellow? Was it the yellow or the orange? No, the orange one. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So now bass.
Yeah.
You can choose the sound.
That's good. I like that.
You like this one?
It's heavy. Yeah. It's cool.
And now some chords. Or what would you like to put?
Yeah, sure. Chords. Why not? It's my first time doing this, so.
This?
Spacey. Yeah.
Now let's talk about quantum computing.
Yeah. It's good for the concept too. It's the kind
like
of,
this?
It's the transition music. Nice.
Like this? You like it?
Yeah.
And we can even add an effect to it.
Phaser in there.
Cool.
Yeah. That was fun.
So now that we have the basis to jam, I'm gonna ask you to open this box.
Oh.
Bring this box to your lap. Open it.
There's some stuff inside. Get
Okay.
ready.
Choose one element for you and pass the box to Iva, please.
It's pretty good though. I mean, there's a literal
Oh,
voice
wow.
changer in here. And then there's a bucket. Can I show what's in here?
Wow.
No, okay. I won't say
No,
that.
no,
That's
no
silly.
problem. You can do it now. You've done. So.
No, I've done it.
Go for it, man. I'm feeling that you're feeling it.
I'm feeling it.
Yeah, so go for it.
I'm a little bit.
And I brought it.
I'm a little bit nervous.
No, I brought it and I was like, I hope he's gonna have the courage to pick it. And you don't need to go close to the mic, huh? Yeah, you will go together.
Yes.
Perfect. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Nice, amazing. Good work.
Amazing.
Well,
I'm running out of things
Travis,
to say there.
well, you are known as the voice of startups in Berlin, particularly the English voice of startups in Berlin. So I think this was such a fitting instrument for you to jam on. But
Awesome.
let me use that to continue saying thank you for the conversation today. Like, we've learned a lot. I learned a lot, particularly about all the opportunities with deep tech, all the opportunities that our city has to grow further and kind of specialize within this category as well, and a big opportunity to thrive, and also certain things that we can do to help, our ecosystem get there. So thank you for all the work that you're doing, and thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you for the great conversation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Travis, it was very nice to have you.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much and see you in the next episode.